Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets. Interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. So, what week are we on? We're on week 50 of this quarantine, because all of a sudden it was dragging ass, and now it went super fast, April. I don't know. They've just flown by these last couple of weeks, and it's May. It's May 1st, people. Springtime in quarantine. Guess someone will have to write that song. I don't know. I did check in with Derek Hill. From my last episode, I told you that his daughter went to New York City. She's a nurse, and she went to help out at one of the hospitals, and she's doing great. She asked to stay for another round, but they didn't let them. I don't know what that's about, but maybe that's hopeful that they're doing well. I think it was a contract, actually, and they wouldn't extend the contract. But seriously, all of those who are helping others in crisis, you are amazing, and thank you. What else? So last week, I did the best production design of the 60s bracket, and Cleopatra won. She beat out 2001 Space Odyssey. I mean, I think that's pretty surprising, but I guess the scale of Cleopatra and maybe the story behind the making of it gave it the edge. But I mean, I love the film. The time and everything and the scale of it, I think it's a wonderfully designed film. So I am glad that it won. I watched Unorthodox on Netflix this week. It's only 4 episodes. You can do it in one night. I did. I liked it. It gave a glimpse inside the Orthodox Jew lifestyle, and I just thought the look that they had in the people's houses, it really captured who these people were. And it was just really interesting little details of religion all over the rooms and the aluminum foil, which I'm not going to ruin anything. You're going to have to watch it to see what I'm talking about. I do think Netflix forgot to post episode 5 because that was a real shit ending, but that's just me. So there. I am still watching, I guess, the A to Z nominated films. I did watch The Irishman for I and Joker for J, and I just haven't posted them yet. It's I watched the film and then I haven't had time to do the posting. I don't know where my time is going, but it's going, and I'm sure you feel the same way. But I was lucky because I had watched The Irishman, and then I got to interview the production designer Bob Shaw, and that was amazing. He is such a nice guy and really is like Mr. New York when it comes to designing a New York show. So that interview will be coming up in a couple weeks. And what else? Well, in this episode, I talk with set deck buyer Laine Abramson. Laine has been a buyer since the early 2000s. She worked on features such as Ocean's 12, Constantine, Fast and Furious, Tokyo Drift, John Carter, many more. She's done very hectic TV shows like Glee, The Mindy Project, Silicon Valley, Glow. Her upcoming projects are a feature called Malignant and a TV program for Amazon called Them Covenant, which sounds really amazing. We also get into the effects of the pandemic on the buyer position and talk about how we think things will change. At this point, you might be hearing my twins in the background in some of this interview. Sorry about that. But I'm sure a lot of you know how it's going and the balance of working and having the kids at home. It's awesome. It's awesome. So they're fine. They were just waking up from a nap. I try to do this while they're napping, but sometimes it doesn't work out. But other than that, they were fine. So I hope you enjoy.
Deadline article?
This Deadline article is... I mean, I have been saying since this first started, I would not want to be a producer. I do not want to figure this out, because I don't know how we're going to do this. I don't know how actors are going to act, and nobody's going to want to fly. Like, I don't know how this is all going to come back together. And then, even, like, in our own departments, like, the guys being in the truck together, and, like, dressing a set together, like... I know it's not forever, but it's really, we're close all day, really. You don't think about it, but we are. Scout fans. I mean,
I feel like as a buyer, I'm lucky. I have less personal contact with, like, we're luckier than the shooting crew.
Oh, every hair and makeup, they can't leave. No. And being on set, when I was an on-set dresser, you can't get away from people on set. No. You can't get more than a foot away from people on set. Yeah.
You're always touching the same stuff people are touching. You're in each other's faces. You're bumping into people.
Yeah.
That is a tight situation. And you're right. Dressing sets, I think it can be coordinated in such a way that we have one guy working over there on that. You have one guy working over there on that. You just have to, it's gonna take longer.
Yeah.
It's not going to be as productive. They're going to have to make sure that every time we dress a set that there's going to be a honey wagon out there, because that's a big problem.
Yeah, it is. It is. That happens all the time.
All the time.
Luckily, honey wagons have gotten better.
Yeah.
They used to be really bad. It was just like a porta-john they would drop off. And now at least it's like wagons that like sometimes have air conditioning, which are nice, and like working sinks. But it's never ideal for us.
Sometimes we don't get them.
No.
Sometimes it's like, no, check the 10th floor. There might be a bathroom up there.
Yeah. And it's always, there's always bathrooms there. We're just not allowed to use them.
Right,
it's such a class system of, like, and I understand, like, when we're in somebody's house and we're dressing somebody's house, they don't want 40 people using their bathroom.
Right,
I get
so
that.
Provide us a bathroom.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. So they're gonna have to make a lot of changes before people are going to be able to go back to work. But as a buyer, I feel fortunate. In the production office, obviously, our desks are going to have to be further away from each other's.
Yeah.
They're going to have to find bigger production offices where they can accommodate more people in a bigger space.
We are on top of each other right now. I mean, I'm the only. This is the first time ever I have my own office.
That's good.
But the buyers are in a bullpen. Patrick and the PA, the coordinator, they're in the bullpen. And then Patrick, they didn't even have an office for him, which was crazy, the lead man. And so they built an office in a bullpen, like outside of the bullpen for him. Like it's like a makeshift little area for him. I feel so bad, but they're not all 6 feet from each other. Oh.
My last show, we had 3 buyers in one office that was like 8 feet by 12 feet.
Yeah.
So me and the other buyer, our desks were bumped up against each other. So we were like 3 feet away from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always, I mean, we're crafty people, but it is always tight. Rarely do I ever have like an office that you have room, or I'm always sharing an office, which is fine. I mean, it's fine.
Yeah.
We're not there 24/7, but neither usually is the other person. Like if I share it with the buyer, they're only there, a couple hours a day or whatever. So it's not that bad. I do think as a buyer, it is a little bit better because you're in the car or you're going to shop, but then you're out in the elements more.
Yeah.
So
that's true, but I've got my mask, I've got my wipes, I've got my Purell.
Yeah.
And, at prop houses, they're so filthy anyway. I never touch my face because my hands are always black after shopping at a prop house.
Yeah.
So
they are. They're dusty. It comes with the territory. They're just dusty. You can't dust all this furniture all the time. Like there's just build up and these huge warehouses that all this thing that they're stocked in. You can't keep everything clean. It's just the practicality of it. Some prop houses are nicer than others. But, you know, it's not everything squeaky clean.
Right.
But I do fear, like, sending people, like,
that's true.
Downtown, or, like, you know, when we have to do markets and we have to buy tons of stuff and, you know.
Going downtown is going to like Moscatel's and being around Skid Row and going to the flower market and fashion district, and that's going to be like, you know, I'm going to think twice next time I go down to, you know, the flower market.
Yeah. And I don't know how we get around all that. I don't know.
You know,
well, I think big picture production wise, I feel like Denise Pizzini and I emailed this morning, and she said there's probably not going to be any more like 6 sets a day. Like, they got to get this into their heads. If we're only about to use one saw, everybody's got to have their own saw.
Right.
We're not going to get it. We're not going to have 6 sets ready and then electric, and like it's just going to have to be weaned back or something. I don't know. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how it's going to get done.
And that in that schedules will probably stretch out longer because it'll take more time to dress sets if we have to keep distance and use more tools, and we might get longer prep times. They might stretch out schedules because of these hour and a half it's going to take to test a crew just to get onto the set.
The testing thing to me is like, that's gonna, I know what it should be done, but that's gonna take so much time. Can you imagine? Plus the fact we don't start with everyone. We're out and about. Like, I'm out dressing, you're out propping. It's not like we start out every day at the office to get our tests done.
No, they're gonna have to have some kind of home kit available at that point, or they're going to have production office have a separate thing, like when we go into the office. So when the set dressers go in at 6, they'll have a separate thing.
I wonder if they'll do it at the gate. You know how
maybe.
I mean,
who knows?
That'll take forever, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to do it. It's scary.
I don't know. None of us know. It's, you know, and the thing is that stressing out about it now is just, what's the point?
No, I agree. I'm glad I don't have to figure it out.
Life is stressful enough at the moment as it is.
Yeah. I do think we're in an industry, though, that I'm not worried about it coming back, because I definitely feel with everyone watching so much TV in this little break that new content is going to be needed, and I'm not worried about our industry. I'm not even worried about going back. I don't like. I'm fine. I know some people are like, I want to go back to work. I'm like, yeah, I know, but like June. I don't know. I'm fine.
This job ended, and I was just starting to put out the feelers for the next gig. But all those people that had projects lined up, ready to go, all those projects now are just thrown into the loop because, you know, your project that was supposed to start in October is contingent on that actor being available. And now, you know, like you said, who knows what's going to happen with all that stuff.
Why? I mean, I always liked working with you because you're always really honest.
I can't help it.
And in positive and negative ways, you're honest. But so what gave you the passion to get into this?
You know, I went to art school as graduate school, and I studied film and video in art school. But the way that they teach you film and video in art school is much different than the way that they teach you film in film school. It's very art. They want you to create art. So there's not necessarily a narrative involved. There's not necessarily a story involved, and they're not really all that concerned with, they teach you specifics about focus pulling and f-stops, and teach you the camera, and they teach you a little bit about lighting, but you don't learn anything about what a grip is or what a grip does, or anything about real film production. And you're basically, you check out your cameras and you go and you create your art pieces with it. And I had come from a background of photography, so I basically was creating moving photographic images. So I thought I wanted to be a director of photography. So when I moved to Los Angeles, I took this UCLA course about different departments within the film industry, and they talked about the art department, and I had never really known what the art department was or what it did, and that sounded really interesting to me, coming from an art background and having gone to art school. And so I, through some friends, I met a woman who was a production designer who did really small non-union pieces. And I met up with her and I started doing things like scenic painting and really, really low budget pieces. And just started doing everything: set dressing, props, scenic painting, a little bit of everything.
Which is like the best experience you can have, really.
Which is the best
getting in there and doing
everything. Yeah, being on set while they shot.
Yeah.
A little bit of everything. And she was great. I learned more from her in like the year that I worked from her than I probably learned from almost any other decorator that I worked with after that. Just simple things: clean up as you work, throw things away as you're working so you don't get left with a huge pile of trash at the end. And just simple common sense things that I've brought with me, all the way. And she taught me a lot of things, and from there, I ended up getting a job as a productionist, as the art department PA on Birds of a Feather, which was the first big motion picture that I ever worked on.
Yeah.
And the production designer was Bo Welch, who at the time was one of the biggest production designers in the business. He had done Batman Returns and Edward Scissorhands, and just a bunch of...
he still is. He's still...
Yeah. He is. He hasn't worked a lot in production design lately. He does intermittent projects.
Yeah.
But, so it was just and Cheryl Karasik was the decorator, and she's just one of the best, most amazing decorators there are. And so just to be working in that environment with those creative people, and I got to do a lot of fun stuff. I got to help build the miniatures, because back then they were building models for every single set.
I know. Wasn't that the coolest thing?
That was the cool, and they were really detailed models with wallpaper and lights and everything,
Yeah.
So I got to do a lot of really, really fun stuff on that. And so from there, I knew I wanted to do art department, but I didn't really know what particular direction I wanted to go in. I didn't know if I wanted to go into set deck or props, but I really liked building the models because I'd always been really into miniatures. So I thought set design was the direction I was going to go in. So I took a couple classes in set design at UCLA, and the second one I took had so much math involved that I was like, there's no way. There's no way. This is just, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Risers and treads. And it was just not going to happen. So, I learned how to do basic floor plans, blueprints, elevations, and things like that. And I could read blueprints and floor plans and all that stuff.
Which is key for us, too, when we get them.
Yes.
In time.
Yeah. It is. It's really important because I look at them all the time.
Yeah.
All the time.
And a lot of times, when they do furniture plans for our director plans, there's not enough furniture on there.
Absolutely.
There's like, they put a bed and 2 nightstands next to it, and then there's 6 feet. Right. Well, if I just went by the floor plan, there'd be nothing there. So let's get a hamper and let's get a suitor and let's do that. But yeah.
We've learned to use the furniture plans as just a guide.
Yes.
Just a guide.
Yeah. Suggestion. Yes.
Yeah. So I sort of jumped around a bit, and then I got this friend of mine was working as the prop master on a talk show and needed someone to do the food styling segments. Ooh. So I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I started that. I was in props, and I was doing the food segments for this talk show where I would cook the finished product and lay out all the ingredients.
That's fun.
And then the celebrity would come on and say, "This is my grandma's pecan pie recipe," and half the time I would just fudge it,
just make it look good. I mean, unless they're going to taste it.
Yeah. And then they would take a bite and be like, "Oh, this is delicious." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I left the butter out of the stuffing recipe." But it's okay. So I sort of transitioned into props, ended up prop mastering a couple low-budget movies, prop mastered a movie that we went on strike to turn union.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a way to get in.
Yeah. And that was pretty stressful because I had production calling me, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning saying, "Are you coming into work tomorrow? Are you going to come in and work tomorrow?" Oh. I said, "I'll be there tomorrow, but I can't guarantee that I'm going to work, but I'll be there." Because I come from a long line of union organizers, and I've been taught my whole life that you never cross a picket line.
No.
So we all get to work the next day, and we're sitting on the trucks, and none of us are going to work. And meanwhile, they called in a scab crew to work. And these guys are going in, and but they couldn't get enough of them to do the job. So after 3 days, I think, of being on strike, we flipped it.
Wow, good job.
Yeah, and the show turned union, and that's how I got in the union.
That's awesome.
And I honestly had only been doing this for about 2, maybe 3 years at best before I got in the union.
That's really great.
I got really lucky. And so after that, I continued in props for another couple of years, probably until around 2002. And then I just had a couple of bad experiences, and I was finding myself doing third broom, and where basically my job was just schlepping chairs back and forth. And I wasn't particularly interested in working with the actors directly. And I wasn't into being like the guy.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you guys have booze on your truck. Hey, you guys have cigarettes. Hey, you guys, And
yeah.
There's a thing with being the prop master. Yeah. That I'm not going to go into the whole prop master thing, but being in props just wasn't really where I wanted to be. It wasn't creative.
And you have to be on set all day. You don't leave unless you're the shopper, but you don't leave.
Exactly.
So you're kind of stuck there.
You're stuck there.
And you have to deal with a lot of personalities. Like the director likes that, the producer doesn't like that, that costs too much, and then the actor doesn't want to wear it, or they want the pink one, or so I always give it up to props of like I could never do it. I don't want to. I
Yeah,
don't want that interaction at all. It's hard.
absolutely. You get screamed at by first
Yeah,
ADs,
yeah.
and
And
I
resetting.
remember.
You're resetting a lot, and the
Yeah,
continuity is on you a lot of the times, and yeah,
yeah.
it's a
It was
pressure.
stressful. It was
Yeah,
stressful.
pressure.
I remember one incident where the DP, because it was low budget and we didn't have effects. Excuse me. The DP asked me to light the fire. We were doing a Christmas scene, and he asked me to light the fire in the fireplace. And the first AD came out and screamed at me. Why did you light that fire? I did not tell you to light that fire. And the DP just sat there. Just sat there. He didn't say one thing. He didn't come to my defense in any way. Step out of the room, walk down the block, gather my, because I was going to start crying. I mean, it was just in front of the whole crew and cast. It was just humiliating. And, and it was low budget. I was having to make my own props. I was having to make my own special effects. And, it was just tough. So I transitioned out of props, but still being on set, into being an on-set dresser, which I liked a lot better because I didn't have to work with the actors.
Yeah.
And, but I liked the camaraderie of working on set. And one of the decorators that I was working as an on-set for needed some shopping done. So I had experience shopping for props because I had done that for several years. So I said, sure. And I started shopping for her. And then another set decorator that I had done on-set for needed a little shopping done. So I shopped for her, and I pretty much quickly transitioned out of on-set dressing to shopping, and that became a full-time thing. In 2003, I started shopping full-time and have been doing that ever since.
Yeah, I don't know if shopper and buyer is the same position, but it sometimes, it takes different titles. But if it was as needed as it was in the 80s, I don't know if decorators I don't think they did, or they just had assistants or something. I don't know how they did it all if you didn't have a shopper. But and those are huge, huge features, in the 80s or something. I'm sure there was more than just a set decorator. I get that. But when you were doing big TV shows and everything, I don't think they had. I think shopper in TV is relatively newer than it was in film.
Well, in the old days, the lead man would shop with the decorator.
Oh, right.
So instead of having a shopper, your lead man would go with the decorator and did a lot of what the shopper does. So the lead man would know where the furniture was, where the aisle was, where and could give that information to the gang.
To the gang, right.
When I did the Birds of a Feather, that would have been 1995. And that was a really big movie. We had one buyer on that movie. Wow. Yeah, we had one buyer, and up until I would say about 2 years ago, one buyer was pretty much the standard.
Yeah.
And you would occasionally bring in a second buyer as needed. But I've noticed now over just the last 2 years that it's become very common to have two buyers.
Two buyers. And I'm starting out on impeachment with 3.
Wow.
But I should say it was also a discussion of this show really needs 2 decorators.
Mm-hmm.
So when that is upfront and honest of well, if you don't want to have 2 decorators, because I can't possibly see how you're going to get all this done.
Right.
And I got to be honest, I don't think I'm the person to do that if it's just me and 2 buyers. I got to be honest with you. I think you need another decorator. Okay, right. Financial. And then I don't even know how it would work if, just a sidebar, I don't even know how it would work with another decorator because It's not like, oh, you do episode 5, I'll do episode 6, because we're shooting out an actor first for 8 episodes. So what am I, you do that? Like, it's too hard. At some point, it's too hard to even have 3 buyers. I got to just do it myself. I don't have the time. So, yeah, so it is becoming more and more commonplace to have 2 buyers. And I think that's just the demand of getting these sets done and shooting them. And there's just so many sets in scripts now. Like, not every phone call has to be in a different room. Like,
I know.
But I mean, Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say the way that they've ramped up the amount of content in each schedule. I remember when it was pretty easy as a single buyer to get through a 5-day schedule or an 8-day schedule on my own. And now 2 buyers can barely do it. My last show, we had 3 buyers.
Yeah.
I did a feature where I was the only buyer. Right before that, we brought in a second buyer for about 2 weeks, but I got that whole feature done as the only buyer.
And that's Malignant? Is that what it is? Yeah. And how was that?
Well, that was interesting because we were on. It was, even though it was a James Wan movie and James has a big name, it was his pet project given to Warner Brothers as kind of his gift for Aquaman.
Oh.
So they gave him this little budget to make his horror movie. And what we did, what ended up making the most sense was to make a deal with one prop house.
Yeah.
So we made a deal with Warner Brothers, and we shopped exclusively at Warner Brothers.
Yep.
And in a way, it made it easier because we had to do everything out of Warner Brothers except for the specialty stuff. So unless we had to go to one of the specialty prop houses for something specific, like Easy Props or Alpha Medical or something like that, the whole movie came out of Warner Brothers. And
thank God they will still do deals like that.
And he did a good deal with us. Yeah. He made a really good deal for us, knowing that we were on a tight budget. And of course, they bitched about it a lot.
Robert
every
Greenfield.
time they came in.
Yeah.
They're like, Malignant here again. Well, we're going under a different name when we were shopping. So but they would comment every time we would come in. But needless to say, we got the movie done, and we'll see how it turns out. It's going to look good.
Yeah. And it's a horror film. I
mean, from what I saw, it looked pretty great.
That's awesome. That's fun. I mean, rarely are films even in LA, so kudos for you for getting one.
The decorator I worked with has not done a feature or a show in LA probably in about 6 years.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the first thing she's done in town in about 6 years.
Damn. Who is the decorator?
Jennifer Gentile.
Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Sweet. Yeah.
She's great, but like her, she's been in New Mexico. She's been all over
Hawaii,
the United States doing features. Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah. She's been all over.
All over the place. So that was the story with that one. So it was a really tight budget. We purchased next to nothing on that show. Other, I think, than bedding and a little bit of lighting. We really rented just about everything. And
good job, because that's hard to do.
Even curtains. I think we rented almost all the curtains.
Wow, that's really hard to do because it takes a lot of time to go through and get the right sizes and measurements for curtains when you're renting, and you're like, I could just go buy this at Target. Like,
oh yeah, it really, really, really does. I mean, it made it. In a way, it made it easier. In a way, it made it harder because, we have to find drapes and we have to find it at Warner Brothers. And so you are in the drapery department for 3 or 4 hours Right.
They have an enormous amount of character drapery.
Yes, they do.
And then beautiful patterns and fabrics and huge amounts, but it is so time consuming.
It is extremely time consuming.
So time consuming because as soon as you find the right pattern, there's not enough of it. Or it's too big and they won't let you, and they're not gonna let you cut it because that's it. They're not getting that fabric again. So it's such a game of
it's true, but they've done a magnificent job of reorganizing it there. They've made it so much better to shop. Yeah. But yeah, drapery is one of my least favorite things to shop for. I have to admit.
Me too. Yeah. I always seem to when I scout and Patrick will be like, oh, okay, we're going to shear this. They asked for shears on this window. And I'm like, all right, so I'll get 4 panels of shears. And he's like, oh, you really need 8. And I'm like, no, we don't. I'm like, I don't want it to be that thick. If we're going to see this shear, at least open it up so we see what I'm doing here. Well, get 6, split the difference. I'm like, all right. It's like a total argument every time. But, so that is a small budget, but you've done some pretty huge budget films too. I mean, you've done Fast and Furious and Ocean's 12 and Constantine. I mean, those are huge budgets, and it's probably the same problems.
Frozen, so I'm waiting for you to come back.
Oh, my back. I was... How about now?
No, I got you now. I lost you on Constant.
Sorry. Oh, I was saying, Constantine, I mean, is it the same? It's the same problems whether you have a big budget or not? Really?
It is. It's the same problems whether you have a big budget or not. You still have a budget that you have to stick to, and, the bigger the movie, the bigger the sets, the bigger the expectations. A lot more manufacturing goes involved, so you're spending a lot more money building and creating things. And it depends on the movie. And for example, I did the third Fast and Furious, which was the one that was set in Tokyo, and the biggest part of our budget went into shipping all of the stuff that we bought from Japan to bring to the United States, because most of it was shot here.
Right.
So we bought a large amount of vending machines. We bought a lot of signage. And we bought a lot of, bicycles and a lot of street dressing.
Right.
Everything from transformers to street lights to construction stuff. And that was a large part of our budget was the purchasing, but also the transporting of getting all that stuff, shipping containers of stuff transported from Japan. So that was a large part of the budget. And of course the stunts, the driving stunts. The sets themselves were quite minimal, and the sets themselves were not very expensive to do.
What was the timing of shipping? Was it 6 weeks, or was it we could get that in 2 weeks?
It wasn't that long. It was about a month, I think.
No, that's not bad. I mean, unless
a month or 3 weeks for the stuff to show up. We had a couple of shipments come at different times, but I think it was about 3 weeks to a month.
Wow.
When it showed up, yeah.
God. Well, I mean, that's the type of thing, I can't forget something. It's it's going to ship. Exactly. Do we have everything? Do we think we have everything? But that's a nice thing, too, about a film. The script isn't going to change that much.
Right.
I mean, you have the whole film in front of you. You could see, we're going to need this, and this. It's not like a TV show where, I don't know, episode 8, we might need it. That's...
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. I did this movie called Role Models.
Oh, yeah.
I kid you not, before we started shooting, we went through 9 completely different full scripts.
What?
Before we got a final shooting script.
Huh. Were any of
So
them funnier?
each script was completely different from the one before. So we literally couldn't do any prepping until we got the final script.
Jeez.
And they put us on, they put us, I think we went down for a month or two, where they kept us all on payroll for 8-hour days, where we all went into the office but had nothing to do. So you would just walk around and people were just watching TV on their computers because there was no script ready. We couldn't prep anything because we had no idea what was going to be in the next script.
Why bother?
But they didn't want anybody to leave. It was the weirdest thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that was funny.
And it's, I mean, I like that film, but it's not like it was like Memento or something, you know?
Right.
Like it wasn't like a brain, like they couldn't figure it out. It's a simple comedy.
Right. I mean, it started, they were a beer company, and then it ended up being an energy drink company, and you know, there were big changes, there were minor changes, but I mean, you know, one script after another. We had 2 different directors, we had 2 different production designers. One would quit, another one would show up, and yeah, it was crazy. And it's amazing that the movie actually turned out as good as it did in the end.
Because it had so many.
We all thought it was just going to be a tank, you know?
But you like working on hard things. You like taking on like a Glee or a Silicon Valley or... And I mean, I've heard stories about Mindy Project that it was very demanding for set dressing.
That was a hard one. That was a hard one for a couple different reasons. One, which I would rather not go into.
Sure.
But production, it was just a confusing... It was just not well produced. It was... Yeah. It had a lot of issues going on. There were just a lot of issues going on with that show that made it difficult to work on. And I only did the first season, and even that, I didn't even finish the first season.
And I think it went on to have like 6 decorators or something. So
yeah, something along those lines, and a couple different production designers.
A lot of input from people who shouldn't be inputting.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
But Glee was hard. Glee was demanding, and all the singing and all the sets and...
Glee was demanding, but it was, you know, once again, I was the only shopper on my season up until about midway through. We started bringing in temporary second shoppers. Mm-hmm. Towards the end, we ended up with a full-time second buyer because it started getting really busy, but... The one episode I remember that was the hairiest was we did a Christmas episode. And the thing about
holidays.
Oh God, I know.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the worst. It's so stupid.
Christmas episodes are always the worst. We all hate them.
Yeah.
And especially when they're very specific. Mm. So we had one tree that had to have vintage, only Christopher Radford vintage ornaments. We had to do one set that was a reproduction of the Judy Garland, Liza Minnelli 1965 Christmas special.
You should have just hired Ethan to do that.
That came out beautiful, actually. That turned out really well. But the hardest one was every episode had to have a musical number. So in addition to all the sets, you had to do a theatrical number.
Right.
For this particular theatrical number for Christmas, we had to have 40 blue Christmas trees. Now, we could not find 40 blue Christmas trees from any one single source, even though only one person made them. So we had to source out 40.
Well, they like the tin ones? Like, what do you, like blue, like you could just paint trees blue? Like
I think they were blue tinsel.
Blue tinsel,
I want to say they were blue tinsel, because if they were flocked, we could have done them ourselves.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah, and they had to be a certain size. So we ended up spending something like $40,000 or $60,000 just getting these 40-something trees shipped. in time for this stupid musical number for Glee.
Oh my God.
And you know, it was only difficult in that Ryan Murphy is very, very particular, and you have to do a board for every single set, and the board has to be approved.
Yes.
And oftentimes the boards wouldn't get to him until the set was already dressed.
Yeah.
So you had to hope that he liked it because the set was dressed and ready to go. And luckily, he never rejected any of the sets we submitted. So we were good. We got very lucky. But I learned a lot of stuff about Australian poofs and
the things we learn.
Yeah, the things we learn. All kinds of theatrical drapery stuff that I really hope I never have to think of again. Yeah, Glee had a lot of different elements that made it a little tricky. It was probably one of the harder shows, I would say, that I've worked on.
And what season of Silicon Valley did you do?
I did season 1 of Silicon Valley.
Oh my gosh. Again, starting off the series, like one of the hardest things, and like I just know from I watched the first season. I think I watched the first 2 seasons, but it just has an incredible, like, every season they do these gigantic sets and like Hooli and all that jazz, and like
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did. They had done the pilot. I can't remember who did the pilot. But they had created Hooli in the pilot. So for the show, we recreated some of it and had to do more. And the house, we recreated the house. We purchased and we did re-rent some of the stuff that they used on the pilot. We purchased some stuff and replaced and dressed out some of the rooms that they didn't use on the pilot. We added. But there were some scenes we did a big, there was like a kind of tech gadget conference that we did for season. That was a pretty big set that we had to do. But that show, what was lucky for me is I had a decorator who really likes to shop on that particular show, and all decorators are different. I have some decorators who just don't like shopping. I've had decorators who have told me outright, I don't shop. I had a decorator on one show say to me, I don't shop. And she wasn't kidding. I mean, not prop houses, not retail stores, not nothing. Never. I have other decorators who like going to certain prop houses, but don't like going to other prop houses. Yeah. And then I have other decorators who love to shop, who hate being stuck in the office and take whatever opportunity they can get out and shop, they will. So this particular decorator who I did Silicon Valley with really liked to shop. So it made my job a lot easier because I was the only buyer on that show.
Oh, yeah.
That she did a lot of shopping. We shopped together a lot. So it made my job a lot easier because there were 2 of us doing the work that a lot of times I'm, responsible for a lot of that.
I don't really feel like I have an option. Like, that's part of the job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, as far as like timing and everything, I didn't get a chance to go there, or I'm sending you here because I can't go, or I always feel like it's that, or you know what I mean? And I try to divide up, like, if I can't get there, I'll ask, someone to do it one time and someone to do it the other, so I'm not like constantly asking someone to do my work for me. But I feel like that's my job. That's what I'm here for. I like going out. I don't want to be in
Yeah.
the fucking van and, like, I don't want to be in meetings all day long in 6 different, locations. Like, it's a relief to go out and go to uni and spend the morning. Like,
Right, and I know a lot of decorators who feel like that, but unfortunately, you guys get stuck.
Yeah.
You get stuck in meetings, you get stuck on scouts, you get stuck dressing sets, you get stuck in more meetings, you get stuck in the office doing budgets that you guys, I've noticed as time goes on, and why we end up with second buyers is you guys end up get stuck in the office more more and more as the years go on.
Yeah.
And that's why we end up with second and third buyers.
Yeah.
Because you guys are stuck in the office more now, not because you want to be, but because you have to be. And so now you need more people out there.
I do a lot of advanced liquidator because it's all online. Or if I could make up.
Yeah, a lot of people
and then do a set by email and be like, okay, at least I did my part in that set. Like, now can someone do the smalls?
Yeah, absolutely. And the decorator that I did Silicon Valley with, I've done 2 other shows with recently, and she does a lot of shopping online. She doesn't particularly like using prop houses. She likes to buy things.
Yeah.
Also because the last 2 shows I've done with her are period shows, so she prefers to purchase. So she does a vast portion of the shopping online.
Yeah.
And we do the prop house stuff.
I do a lot of online shopping. I do a lot of Wayfair. I do a lot of Amazon. If it's on Amazon and I can get it, I'm not going to send someone out to 4 different stores. I'm just going to get it. And that is out of not convenience. It's out of necessity of I don't have time to send someone to 4 stores. So I'm just going to buy it myself on Amazon. And I've narrowed my choices, unfortunately, to what Amazon has, but I don't care. Unfortunately, I got to get it done. So, and then is the 2 period shows you're talking about, is one Glow? Because I want to ask you about that.
Yeah, Glow is one of them.
So how did you not call me and ask about casino design? Because I was a dealer. Remember I was a dealer?
Oh, that's right.
As soon as I saw the show did all Vegas, I was like, oh, I would have loved to have done that. I was like, are they recreating the Riviera? What are they doing? Oh my God, it's so great.
No,
it's so great.
Honestly, it's just completely slipped my mind that you were a dealer.
So I have so many questions.
Slipped my mind.
I have so many questions. They're how did you buy all the slots? Did you? No.
Okay, so the casino was a fictional casino based on no other casinos. It had an Asian theme.
Right.
So the casino, fictional, Asian, called it the Fantan.
Yeah. I thought it was maybe Imperial Palace or something back in the
possibly,
day. Yeah.
Possibly. They did a lot of research on Vegas, on the casinos of the 80s. And it's quite possible that they drew inspiration from the Imperial Palace. That's quite possible. I wasn't on when they were doing the initial research, so I wasn't there for that. I came on. They had already picked wallpaper and carpet. Well, ask me questions, and then I can answer the questions.
When you're sourcing out the casino pieces,
or I can just babble.
No. Well, when you're sourcing out specific things for a set, like slot machines or card tables, I know they're really expensive if you went to buy them. I know that there's places in Vegas, graveyards of old stuff that you could buy and maybe get new graphics for. Was that the road you guys took, or were they all rentals?
We actually rented them all. We made a deal with RC Vintage.
Oh wow, that was a lot. I didn't realize they had that many.
Yeah, they have a lot. RC Vintage, between RC Vintage and Lenny Marvin, we got all of the slot machines and all of the tables and all of the chairs and bar stools. We recovered the bar stools, and we recovered some of the bar stools, and some of the chairs came from Warner Brothers, but all of the tables and machines came from prop houses. All the accessories for the machines, all the cards, the sticks, the chips, all of those were purchased.
And that backstage area is really great. The dressing room and everything, that must have been fun.
Yeah, we purchased, everything was bought, pretty much everything, every accessory, almost every everything was purchased between eBay and Etsy and Cherish. Almost everything was purchased on that show.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
I mean, we bought vintage makeup. Everything is vintage. There's nothing in that backstage that wasn't period correct. And even though the details are really tiny, like every bottle of Noxzema, every bottle of Maybelline is all period correct.
Did you just print new labels, or did you find
we found?
Wow.
Yeah, we found it, and what we couldn't find, we printed new labels. Like when we had to do a salon, we bought I found a plastics place and bought quantities of vintage looking like Vidal Sassoon type bottles and did our own graphics on them.
That's awesome.
Because we needed quantities. But as far as like the makeup goes, we found enough on eBay that we didn't need to do fake labels, and we played with it. If it was from 1982, we'd use it, and if it was from 1987, we'd probably use it.
Were you into Glow? Did you watch it when it was on in the 80s?
I don't know. I didn't.
I loved it. I watched it every Saturday.
Did you really?
Oh my God, I loved it. It was that, and then Friday the 13th, the series was on after that.
Oh no, that's awesome!
It was great. I watched it every week. I knew and then there's that great documentary about the big chick, the Hawaiian chick, how she got sick, how like that.
Machu Picchu.
Yeah, how was really bad for her body. I mean, the weight was bad for your body, but the wrestling was on top of it.
Oh my God, just seeing what those girls went through, I didn't watch it in the 80s, but I did watch the first season when it came on, and so I was a fan of the show before I worked on it. But no, I didn't know about it until I saw the show.
What is the movie Them about? I couldn't find anything.
Oh, Them Covenant is a new show for Amazon. And it is, it's really interesting. It is about the first Black family to move to, I believe it's East Compton in 1953. So at that time, Compton was divided into two sections, and one was all white, and one was white, but Black families had already started moving in. So this is the first Black family moving into the all-white section of Compton. So it deals with racism, but there's also a supernatural element to the show.
Oh.
So it's creepy. And it's disturbing.
Is there any Black Dahlia type stuff in there? Because I like that.
I haven't seen the dailies, but I have seen the sets, so I know that the sets look great. I don't know how it's filmed.
I mean, 50s LA is really nice. It's really fun, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the cars are amazing.
Yeah.
The houses, what they did is they built out in Pomona, they built a block of these 1950s houses. It looks sort of like Edward Scissorhands.
Ah, that's awesome.
These brightly painted 1950s suburban block. And then we did the interiors on sound stages. And each house has its own sort of color theme, and so that, the characters have their own colors and their own styles. And
that's fun.
But that's tricky too. You have to do a lot of research because you can look at a piece of furniture and go, well, that looks 1950s, but it could also be 1960s. There's a lot of stuff that that crosses over 50s and 60s and even early 70s, and you really got to study it, because a lot of times you pick up a piece of furniture and it looks like 1950s, but it's not,
And the 50s are interesting because the 40s were, I mean, you always could have something older in there.
Which we did a lot.
Because people don't update. But you want to sell that it's the 50s. It's a weird thing of, like, reality. People don't refurbish their house every year just because it's 1956. Like,
right.
But you want to have the feeling of the 50s in there. But there's a difference between the 40s and, like, people started really getting into furnishing their homes, and the urban sprawl and the everyday furniture became more popular and, like, mass produced and everything. So
right, Haywood Wakefield.
Yeah. So that's a beautiful period to do. But yeah, it's hard. I mean, do you have, like, resources that you are go-to for that?
Well, I'll tell you, we did a lot out of Omega. We did a lot out of Omega. We had to do a sanitarium, and like a I don't know, was it a tuberculosis? No, it was a mental sanitarium, and we did, like,
white metal beds
outside. And yeah, we only had to do one room, so we didn't have to do a whole room.
Oh, that's good.
Originally, it was a big room with multiple beds, which we found the beds and everything. But it ended up being just one room with 2 beds. But we did have to do like a waiting room and an outside area, which we did a lot of wicker and, card tables and stuff like that. And with the inside, we did it all in a, like, craftsman kind of
nice
vibe, because you don't see that very much now. So it was like, oh, we get to use craftsman furniture. I haven't done that in a while, And we did do a lot, because it's funny when you look at styles with furniture and also with clothing, the very beginning of a century really reflects the end of the century before it. So we're in 53, which really looks a lot like the late 40s.
Right.
Except that we have television now,
So you got to fit that in.
So we did do a lot of mixing of, there's some 30s furniture, some 40s furniture, some early 50s furniture in there. And we really mixed it up so that every environment had a different style, so that we didn't do the same style over and over again.
Yeah.
Someone might have a more modern,
contemporary
look. Someone might have more of a traditional Americana colonial look, so that each character had a different look.
How many episodes is it?
Well, it's supposed to be 10, but they shut down right at the beginning of the 10th episode, I think. So you got to go back and finish that, and I think that's it. It was supposed to start airing. I'm not sure.
Well, these editors are working,
right?
Like, editors and writers, they're working.
Editors and writers are working. There'll be plenty of content once we're up and running.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a little bit of a lull, but not really. Not that anyone will notice. There's so much stuff going on in the world. I think, though, that's a big thing too, was that Deadline article was saying about, like, tax credits and moving to, Canada for a cheaper thing is not going to be as cheap anymore and or worth it. I don't think the actors are going to want to do it. I think they're right. But you went to Shreveport to work, right?
I did. I decorated a little movie in Shreveport.
Yeah. How was that location? Did you like it?
It would have been I just was really lonely. The biggest problem of being on location by yourself without having a crew I mean, it was so low budget. It was me and it was the designer. I didn't even have a lead man, really.
Yeah.
I had a guy on the crew who could, like, pick stuff up, but I couldn't count on him to lead, so I basically led the show myself.
Yeah.
So, and the designer was just so busy because she didn't have an art director, that I was just lonely. And once the set got built, there wasn't anything left for me to do. So I was lonely and I was bored out of my mind, and I was stuck in Shreveport. If it had been New Orleans or something, or Baton
depends where you are.
It would have been different. So, and people are telling me, don't drive around Shreveport, it's not safe. So I was like, I couldn't even leave the hotel. Yeah. So, it was kind of a drag.
I feel like, I mean, you could either be completely bored or you never get a day off. That's the other problem going on location is like, well, I don't have anything else to do. I might as well work. I might as well go shopping. I might as well research this. And, like, you got me here.
Right. I mean, the weeks were fine. Work was fine. I was busy at work. But then, the end of the day would come or the weekend was coming. And I'm like, oh, I could go to Target again.
Yeah. I'd kill to go to Target right now, though.
Oh, I know, right?
Isn't she a spark? I learned a lot from Laine when I worked with her on Bones, and I'm sure she was like, who is this dipshit decorator? But I'm glad that she came on with me, and she helped me produce some really great sets. So I'm very thankful for that. Look for upcoming episodes, which include production designer Ingino Cabrera, which I know I am saying wrong. I'm going to get it right, I promise. Bob Shaw and Corey Lorenzen. Also, very exciting, I've turned some of the clips from these podcast interviews into YouTube videos, with some behind-the-scene pics, and they're just little snippets, like a minute or so long, but it shows how we get it all done. It's on the YouTube channel Decorating Pages, or the website decoratingpages.com. Now, I know you have a minute or two on your hands. Just scroll on over and rate the podcast real quick on iTunes. Clickety click 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 real fast, 5 stars. You're done. Thanks. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Decorating Pages is sponsored by Stogie Floaty. Float 'em if you got 'em. Luxury pool floats. On sale now at stogiefloaty.com.
Welcome to Pro Tips for the Pros, brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads. In this series, we'll explore essential advice for professional contractors to deliver outstanding renovation results. Let's dive in. After completing the renovation, follow up with the customer to ensure their satisfaction and address any remaining concerns. Provide maintenance tips and guidance to help them preserve the results of the renovation for years to come. Thank you for joining us for this pro tip on planning thorough renovations. Stay tuned for more expert advice brought to you by Floor & Decor Bailey's Crossroads.
A lot of people tolerate ordinary. Ordinary bathrooms, kitchens, entryways. Well, not on your watch. If you're a pro, you've got a new partner in town. Floor & Decor. From tile to wood to stone, Floor & Decor has more styles and job lot quantities of Schluter, Mapei, Laticrete, and other brands pros trust. Come see a whole new way to wow with Floor & Decor. Coming soon to Bailey's Crossroads.